Pusing banget gue. Penghitungan natura pajak udah rumit, banyak banget lagi. Aduh, itu kategorinya apa sih? Deductible atau enggak ya? Coba cek PMK 66 dulu deh. Aduh, itu batasannya berapa sih? Buka PMK 66 lagi deh. Tunggu, karyawan penerima natura di perusahaan ada berapa banyak ya? 7.000 orang. Banyak banget.
Lagi hitung natura ya? Ribet banget ya? Kita harus klasifikasiin mana yang dapat dibiayakan dan yang tidak dapat dibiayakan. Kita juga harus hitung jenis kriteria pajaknya. Kita juga harus buat perhitungan tiap bulan, setahun, dan per cabang. Kita juga harus kirim bukti potong pajak ke masing-masing pegawai lewat email. Dan belum lagi kita
Coba aja ada software yang bisa ngitung natura otomatis.
udah ada tahu pakai TaxPrime teknologi human capital aja. Cukup dengan tinggal angka mudah loh.
Input data udah langsung dihitung tuh sama software dan dapat diintegrasikan dengan sistem payroll perusahaan loh.
Datanya aman dan yang pasti biayanya juga terjangkau loh.
Emang boleh semudah itu?
Langsung ke websitenya aja.
Teknologi informasi bergerak maju dengan pesat setiap detiknya. Kemudahan mengakses informasi kapanpun dan dimanapun membuat dunia seakan ada dalam genggaman. Untuk memenuhi kebutuhan masyarakat, media dituntut untuk mampu menyampaikan informasi terbaru yang komprehensif. Selamat datang di pajak.com, portal berita yang menyajikan informasi eksklusif dan aktual seputar perpajakan, ekonomi, serta keuangan. Kunjungi kami di www.pajak.com.
Family-owned businesses are the backbone of Indonesia's economy, as it comprises 95% of all businesses. At TaxPrime, we recognize that family enterprises go beyond financial transactions and business operations. They are built to create a legacy. Our team is devoted to providing personalized advisory and comprehensive family office services tailored to our client unique needs. With certified family office professionals and expertise ranging in business, legal, tax, accounting, and internal control, we ensure that our approach is holistic and aligned with your distinctive goals, purposes, and financial frameworks. Moreover, we ensure to imbue environmental, social, and governance principles to the solution we provide, ensuring your family ventures positively impact the communities and environment at large. At TaxPrime, we don't just think outside of the box. We reimagine the box as a sphere, allowing endless possibility as opposed to traditional solutions. Work with TaxPrime and let us create the foundation for the lasting family heritage.
Welcome to TaxPrime, a hub of excellence in transfer pricing and international tax services. Here, we merge unparalleled expertise with innovative strategies to navigate the complex world of taxations. Guided by over 60 accomplished advisors, including industry veterans from tax authorities, TaxPrime stands as a leader in transfer pricing and international tax consultancy. We are proud of our exceptional more than 90% success rate in resolving transfer pricing disputes, reflecting our dedication to delivering accurate and effective tax solutions. Recognized by World Tax and the International Tax Review, our expertise is acknowledged and respected globally. TaxPrime effectively integrates ESG principles into a broad spectrum of services, complying with sustainability guidelines and transfer pricing regulations, and provides a complete range of services through our global network, including transfer pricing planning, compliance, and dispute resolution to ensure adherence to regulations and diminish tax disputes, facilitating assured and adept navigations in the ever-changing global tax environment. TaxPrime excels in offering expert support for advanced pricing agreements and mutual agreement procedures, as well as providing specialized assistance in transaction tax and business advisory and BEPS actions plan readiness. We specialize in navigating the complexity of APA strategic planning for transfer pricing compliance and skillfully manage MAP-related tax treaty disputes, focusing on resolutions and implementations to streamline international tax strategies and reduce tax conflicts. TaxPrime is at the forefront of international tax reform, adeptly guiding business through the OECD's BEPS action plans, including the pivotal Global Minimum Tax Pillar 2 implementations. With the launch of our tax transaction and business advisory subdivisions, we are expanding our expertise to include specialized guidance in business restructuring, mergers, and acquisition, showcasing our commitment to evolving and enhancing our tax advisory services. Step into the future with TaxPrime, where expert tax strategies meet the dynamic needs of your business. We are more than just advisor. We are your partners in navigating the intricate world of tax and transfer pricing. TaxPrime, synonymous with excellence in tax solutions.
Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu peserta yang terhormat, selamat datang di webinar TaxPrime. 2024, Navigating the New Indonesia Transfer Pricing Guideline PMK 172. Saya Bayu Rahmat Rahayu akan memoderatori sesi pertama ini. Nah, PMK 172 ini sangat menarik untuk dibahas. Selain menggabungkan dan menggantikan 3 PMK sekaligus, PMK tentang EPA, PMK tentang MAP, PMK tentang TPDOC, banyak sekali update dan upgrade pengaturan transfer pricing di sini. Cukup beralasan dan lengkap untuk kita menyebutnya sebagai the Indonesian Transfer Pricing Guideline. Untuk membahasnya telah hadir 2 pembicara kita, Pak Emmanuel Dewo Adi Unedar, Pak Dewo, dan Pak Muhammad Noprianto. Selamat pagi Pak Dewo.
Selamat pagi.
Pagi Pak Nopri.
Selamat pagi Pak.
Nah, dalam sesi ini masing-masing pembicara akan menyampaikan materinya selama 15 menit. Pak Nopri akan bicara tentang PKKU dan bagaimana kita bisa menerapkannya. Kemudian Pak Dewo melanjutkan akan diskusi tentang kewenangan DJP dalam PKKU dan bagaimana wajib pajak dapat memitigasinya. Nah, sebelum lebih jauh, mari kita simak profil panelis kita. Pertama Pak Noprianto. Nah, Pak Nopri adalah Senior Manager Transfer Pricing Dispute di TaxPrime. Beliau memperoleh Master Degree di International Tax di University. Beliau bergabung dengan TaxPrime setelah 23 tahun berkarir di DJP. Auditor berpengalaman yang memegang CA dan CPA. Oke, next kita selanjutnya Pak Dewo. Nah, kalau Pak Dewo ini adalah Managing Partner Transfer Pricing di TaxPrime. Seperti Pak Nopri, Pak Dewo juga memperoleh Master Degree dari Leiden University dan bergabung di TaxPrime sejak 2016 setelah beliau berkarya di DJP selama 7 tahun. Nah, selama di TaxPrime, Pak Dewo ini banyak memperoleh penghargaan termasuk sebagai Rising Transfer Pricing Expert dari World TP dan dari International Tax Review. Nah, setelah mengenal pembicara berdua, kita bisa masuk ke pembicara pertama. Silahkan Pak Nopri.
Ya, baik. Terima kasih Pak Bayu atas waktunya. Selamat pagi para pemirsa, Bapak Ibu sekalian, meluangkan waktunya untuk mengikuti seminar webinar TaxPrime terkait PMK 172, Indonesia Transfer Pricing Guideline. Next. Ya, PMK 172 ini adalah merupakan follow up dari Undang-Undang HPP, PP 50 dan juga PP 55. Seperti yang sudah dijelaskan oleh Pak Bayu sebelumnya bahwa PMK 172 ini sangat menarik karena merupakan omnibus yang menggabungkan berbagai ketentuan terkait transfer pricing, terkait MIP, MAP, EPA dan juga peraturan transfer pricing, dan juga termasuk memberikan klarifikasi serta menyempurnakan ketentuan yang lama. Dan juga perlu dicatat bahwa PMK 172 ini mulai berlaku sejak tanggal diundangkan, yaitu tanggal 29 Desember 2023. Sehingga Bapak Ibu sudah harus menerapkan PMK ini pada saat pembuatan TPDOC untuk tahun 2024.
Baik Bapak Ibu, penjelasan yang akan kami sampaikan pada prinsipnya kami bagi menjadi 2 bagian, yaitu terkait dengan aspek PKKU dan yang kedua terkait dengan aspek pencegahan dan penyelesaian sengketa, yaitu MAP dan EPA. Sebagaimana Bapak Ibu juga bisa melihat dalam presentasi kami bahwa terkait dengan aspek PKKU kami bagi dalam beberapa hal, terutama kami akan menjelaskan terkait dengan related party, penerapan PKKU dan sebagainya. Dan nanti akan kami sampaikan terkait dengan aspek yang berubah dalam ketentuan MAP dan EPA.
Next. Ya, terkait hubungan istimewa, ini adalah hal yang sangat perlu diperhatikan dan sangat penting Bapak Ibu sekalian. Karena hubungan istimewa ini adalah pintu masuk atau entry point atas kewajiban Bapak Ibu sekalian dalam melakukan pengujian PKKU ataupun arm's length principle dalam transaksi afiliasi yang Bapak Ibu lakukan. Sehingga dalam mengidentifikasi ada atau tidaknya hubungan istimewa ini perlu dilakukan secara hati-hati dan secara komprehensif. Penekanan yang saya ingin tunjukkan di sini adalah terkait definisi hubungan istimewa terkait kontrol melalui manajemen dan penggunaan suatu teknologi. Jadi sebenarnya ini sudah ada di peraturan yang lama di PP 55 tahun 2022 dan juga penjelasan Undang-Undang HPP pasal 18 ayat 4. Dan jadi ini bukan suatu hal yang baru. Namun sebenarnya yang perlu kita tunggu adalah contoh bagaimana dari penerapan penguasaan manajemen dan penggunaan suatu teknologi ini. Kemudian hal berikutnya yang ingin saya tekankan di sini terkait poin E dan poin F, yaitu hubungan istimewa terkait yang disebabkan karena suatu pihak menyatakan mempunyai hubungan istimewa dengan pihak lainnya. Jadi ini sering beberapa kali kami temukan kasus di lapangan bahwa terdapat kemungkinan perbedaan antara daftar pihak afiliasi yang Bapak Ibu sampaikan di laporan di SPT tahunan dengan yang ada di audit report. Ini perlu jadi concern. Jadi hati-hati dalam ini. Hal ini mungkin saja terjadi karena terkait accounting mempunyai pedoman hubungan istimewa tersendiri skopnya, yaitu terkait PSKK 7. Jadi secara accounting dalam PSAK definisi hubungan istimewa itu agak sedikit lebih luas. Jadi perlu diingat bahwa harus lebih concern ke hal ini ketika menyajikan hubungan istimewa dalam SPT, apakah telah sesuai dengan apa yang ada disajikan dalam audit report. Jadi tidak akan menimbulkan dispute ke depannya ketika apabila terjadi permintaan keterangan dari DJP ataupun pemeriksaan dari DJP. Itu yang salah satu perlu diperhatikan. Next slide. Ya, terkait penerapan arm's length principle di sini sebenarnya bukan hal yang baru karena sudah ada di peraturan sebelumnya, yaitu DJP tetap menerapkan prinsip ex ante, yaitu penetapan harga transfer itu pada saat sebelum transaksi dilakukan. Jadi tidak ada perubahan di sini. Kemudian juga terkait poin keadaan yang sebenarnya. Jadi di sini sebenarnya adalah antara contractual term dan actual conduct. Jadi dalam hal terjadi perbedaan antara contractual term dengan actual conduct, maka tentunya sebagaimana yang sudah kita ketahui bahwa actual conduct lah yang menjadi yang harus kita pegang. Contractual term seperti hal yang sudah disajikan juga di OECD TP Guideline bahwa itu hanyalah sebagai starting point saja. Kemudian penekanan yang lain adalah terkait separate or combined transaction, yaitu apakah segregasi ataupun agregasi di sini. Dalam aturan PMK ini disebutkan bahwa segregasi itu tetap diutamakan. Next slide. Berikutnya adalah tahapan, ada dua tahapan dalam ALP principle, yaitu PKKU. Jadi di sini tetap dua sama seperti sebelumnya. Jadi sebenarnya dalam tahapan penerapan ALP ini adalah sejajar dengan apa yang dinyatakan oleh OECD TP Guideline tentang 9-step analysis, yaitu proses-proses yang harus dilakukan atau langkah-langkah. Kemudian juga terkait dengan tahapan pendahuluan, ini sebenarnya adalah intisari dari apa yang sudah dinyatakan dalam OECD TP Guideline Chapter 6, 7, 8, 9, dan 10, yaitu tentang transaksi-transaksi yang spesifik atau tertentu. Kemudian yang menarik di sini adalah adanya perubahan berupa tambahan dalam tahapan pendahuluan, yaitu tambahan atas transaksi tertentu, yaitu transaksi keuangan lainnya. Hal ini sejalan dengan apa yang telah terjadi perubahan dalam OECD TP Guideline tahun 2022, yaitu penambahan Chapter 10, Financial Transaction, dan ini patut kita apresiasi. Kemudian hal yang tidak kalah penting lainnya adalah penambahan penjelasan yang agak lebih detail dalam aturan PMK 172 ini terkait industri analisis. Jadi di PMK terbaru ini akan lebih detail lagi apa yang harus dilakukan ketika perusahaan dalam menganalisa apa yang terjadi yang harus dianalisa dalam analisis industri. Kemudian terkait manfaat ekonomis, ini juga dijelaskan lebih lanjut di dalam PMK terbaru ini dan sangat bagus tentunya. Sebagaimana yang sering kami temukan di lapangan bahwa economic benefit itu seringkali diartikan sempit ataupun sering terjadi perbedaan pendapat di sini bahwa manfaat ekonomis itu seringkali diartikan hanya untuk peningkatan penjualan ataupun pengurangan biaya, baru dianggap bahwa ini ada mempunyai manfaat ekonomis atau economic benefit. Tetapi di peraturan terbaru ini dapat dijelaskan bahwa economic benefit, manfaat ekonomis juga terjadi apabila dalam hal mempertahankan posisi perusahaan, itu juga bisa termasuk, dan juga apabila perusahaan membutuhkan adanya suatu kebutuhan komersial lainnya. Tentunya ini sangat bermanfaat bagi wajib pajak tentang penjelasan apakah yang dimaksud dengan manfaat ekonomis di sini. Next slide. Selanjutnya adalah terkait TP method. Di sini tidak ada perubahan, tetap 8 metode seperti sebelumnya. Yang menjadi highlight di sini adalah metode cut. Di sini dijelaskan bahwa metode cut ini disejajarkan dengan metode cut. Jika sebelumnya bahwa metode cut ini letaknya adalah di metode lainnya di bawah, sedangkan metode cut itu ada di atas. Tetapi di sini ditambahkan penjelasan bahwa dalam hal semua metode dapat diterapkan secara andal, maka metode cut dan metode cut itu harus diutamakan. Jadi sejajar di sini kedudukannya cut dengan cut. Kemudian lagi terkait metode penilaian business valuation dan asset valuation. Jadi di sini perlu diingat bahwa DJP juga sudah mengeluarkan peraturan tentang valuasi bisnis, yaitu ataupun valuation aset di dalam PMK 79 tahun 2023. Sehingga perlu diingat oleh Bapak Ibu sekalian, apabila terjadi transaksi penilaian aset atau pengalihan aset ataupun pengalihan bisnis transfer, perlu diperhatikan untuk menerapkan terkait PMK 79 tahun 2023. Next slide. Terkait PSM. Ya, hal yang sangat diapresiasi dalam PMK terbaru ini adalah banyaknya tambahan penjelasan yang lebih detail terhadap penerapan PSM. Terutama di sini dapat dilihat bahwa dimungkinkan bahwa pembagian itu tidak hanya di level profit, tetapi juga dapat terjadi apabila dalam hal laba gabungan itu menderita loss. Jadi dimungkinkan pembagian PSM itu dalam kondisi pembagian loss sharing, pembagian kerugian. Kemudian juga dijelaskan lebih lanjut bahwa pembagian itu dapat berupa di level gross profit ataupun di level net profit, yang sebelumnya mungkin tidak dijelaskan. Kemudian dijelaskan lebih lanjut tentang bentuk dividing factor. Dalam hal ini bentuk dividing factor itu dapat merefer kepada pembagian laba yang terjadi antar pihak independen, ataupun dapat berupa kontribusi masing-masing pihak jika pembagian laba pihak independen itu tidak tersedia. Kemudian adanya tambahan penjelasan tentang kriteria faktor pembagi, yaitu tentunya adanya data, dapat diverifikasi, dan juga terbebas dari hubungan istimewa. Next slide. Kemudian terkait penggunaan single year dan multiple year, ya ini sangat klasik, sering sekali kita temukan dispute terkait masalah single year atau penggunaan data pembanding multiple year. Jadi tetap seperti sebelumnya, penggunaan single year itu tetap diutamakan. Bahwa multiple year dapat dilakukan dalam hal akan meningkatkan kesebandingan tentu saja. Next slide. Ya, ini terkait penerapan threshold kewajiban pembuatan TP Doc. Ini sebenarnya tidak ada perubahan dibanding peraturan sebelumnya, jadi tetap. Kemudian ada sedikit minor changes terkait kewajiban pembuatan CBCR sebelumnya, terkait adanya perubahan wording yang semula peredaran bruto konsolidasi pada tahun pajak yang bersangkutan menjadi tahun pajak sebelum tahun pajak yang dilaporkan. Kemudian juga terdapat penyesuaian pada lampiran yang berisi rincian isi dari dokumen lokal yang sudah disesuaikan dengan tahap penerapan PKKU. Dan penegasan bahwa DJP itu bisa meminta dokumen pada saat pengawasan kepatuhan dan juga pada saat pemeriksaan. Mungkin cukup dari saya, Pak Bayu. Terima kasih, Pak.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Nobri. Presentasi tentang PKKU dan menerapkannya cukup lengkap, pasti banyak pertanyaan. Tapi sebelumnya mungkin Pak Dewa akan menjelaskan tentang bagaimana kalau tadi dari sisi WP, sekarang dari sisi DJP. Kira-kira bagaimana DJP menerapkan dan apa peran kita sebagai WP menyiapkannya. Silakan Pak Dewa.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Nopri tadi sudah menyampaikan. Terima kasih Pak Bayu. Di bagian ini kalau tadi Bapak Ibu juga sudah mendengarkan bahwa Pak Nopri menjelaskan terkait dengan chapter 2 sampai dengan chapter 4 terkait dengan penerapan PKKU. Di bagian ini kita akan melanjutkan di chapter 4 dan chapter 5 yang diatur dalam PMK 172 terkait dengan primary adjustment, secondary adjustment, dan terkait dengan corresponding adjustment. Bahwa pada prinsipnya DJP, kalau kita lihat dalam slide ini, DJP memiliki kewenangan untuk melakukan primary adjustment dalam hal terdapat 4 kondisi. Yang pertama bahwa wajib pajak tidak membuktikan tahapan pendahuluan sebagaimana tadi sudah dijelaskan oleh Pak Nopri. Ada beberapa tahapan pendahuluan untuk specific transactions, dan yang terakhir apabila ditemukan bahwa laba ataupun harga yang disepakati antara wajib pajak tidak sesuai dengan PKKU, maka DJP memiliki kewenangan untuk melakukan primary adjustment. Namun yang menjadi penting adalah bahwa dalam pelaksanaan untuk melakukan koreksi atau menerapkan primary adjustment, DJP perlu melihat bagaimana penerapan PKKU ataupun tipidok yang sudah dilakukan oleh wajib pajak, apakah sudah sesuai atau tidak. Dalam hal memang wajib pajak sudah bisa membuktikan dalam tipidok tersebut prinsip-prinsip PKKU tadi sudah dilaksanakan, maka DJP juga harus menggunakan tipidok. Hal ini menjadi penting buat wajib pajak, buat kita semua, bahwa tipidok bukan hanya semata-mata untuk memenuhi kewajiban, tetapi memang menjadi sarana, menjadi dokumentasi yang digunakan untuk membuktikan dan tentu saja untuk memitigasi resiko terjadinya koreksi primary adjustment. Lalu yang penting lagi adalah di dalam ketentuan ini juga diatur secara spesifik bahwa wajib pajak harus menyampaikan tipidok dalam hal Direktorat Jenderal Pajak dalam khususnya terkait dengan SP2DK, maka harus menyampaikan dalam kurun waktu 1 bulan. Dengan demikian menjadi penting juga terkait dengan bagaimana pembuatan tipidok juga harus diperhatikan dan sudah disiapkan jauh-jauh hari karena memang PMK 172 juga menghendaki hal tersebut. Next slide. Terkait dengan mekanisme atas primary adjustment, secondary adjustment, dan corresponding adjustment, Bapak Ibu mungkin sudah memiliki kasus yang serupa yang sudah pernah dialami dalam pemeriksaan. Nah, sebagai contoh, kalau kita lihat dalam slide ini, terdapat koreksi sebesar 20 juta rupiah yang dilakukan oleh DJP, maka terdapat konsekuensi, yaitu aspek pertama adalah secondary adjustment. Dalam konteks transaksi domestik akan dikenakan PPh pasal 23, dalam konteks transaksi cross border akan dikenakan PPh pasal 26. Dan satu lagi adalah aspek terkait dengan PPN. Sebagaimana sudah diulas dalam PMK 172, yang menjadi perhatian dan menjadi hal yang cukup menarik adalah terkait dengan secondary adjustment, bahwa dalam hal cross border transaction, apabila wajib pajak dapat memenuhi kewajiban administrasi atau formal atas pemenuhan SKD dan lain sebagainya, maka tarif yang digunakan adalah menggunakan tarif sesuai dengan P3P, jadi bukan 20%, tapi menggunakan tarif yang diatur dalam pasal-pasal yang mengatur terkait dengan dividen. Dan yang kedua adalah terkait dengan aspek PPN, bahwa pada prinsipnya terkait dengan PPN, wajib pajak boleh untuk melakukan pengkreditan sepanjang atas PPN tersebut disertai dengan invoice yang nyata ya. Jadi ini menjadi klarifikasi buat kita bersama. Next slide. Di dalam slide ini kami coba sampaikan ada perbandingan antara PMK 172 dengan PMK sebelumnya, yang pada prinsipnya kami mau highlight bahwa dalam ketentuan PMK sebelumnya, terutama di PMK 22, masih terdapat kemungkinan potensial double taxation karena memang belum diatur secara spesifik terkait dengan corresponding adjustment. Tetapi setelah dengan adanya PMK 172, corresponding adjustment dapat dilaksanakan sehingga itu akan mengurangi dampak dari primary adjustment dan itu akan memudahkan wajib pajak dalam melakukan corresponding adjustment antara satu pihak dengan pihak lain, terutama dalam transaksi domestik. Untuk slide selanjutnya terkait dengan secondary adjustment, pada prinsipnya terdapat klarifikasi bahwa atas transaksi apapun, itu yang pertama, bahwa dalam PMK 172 menjadi penting terdapat klarifikasi bahwa atas transaksi apapun yang tidak memenuhi kewajaran PKKU, maka DJP memiliki kewenangan untuk melakukan atau merekategorisasi atas selisihnya, disebut sebagai dividen, dan tentu saja ada implikasi yang tadi kami sudah sampaikan terkait dengan implikasi PPh pasal 23 dan PPh pasal 26, dan dalam hal secondary adjustment ini juga dapat dihilangkan atau tidak dilakukan oleh DJP dalam hal wajib pajak sudah melakukan repatriasi ataupun wajib pajak setuju dengan penentuan ataupun koreksi yang dilakukan oleh DJP. Nah, ini menjadi penting buat kita bersama, sepanjang Bapak Ibu menyetujui atas primary adjustment yang dilakukan oleh DJP dan terdapat repatriasi dalam konteks cross border, maka secondary adjustment tersebut tidak dapat dilakukan oleh DJP. Next, terkait dengan aspek VAT, sebagaimana tadi sudah kami singgung bahwa terdapat klarifikasi ataupun penjelasan lebih lanjut bahwa DJP memiliki kewenangan untuk melakukan penyesuaian terkait dengan harga apabila memang harga yang disepakati antara para pihak tersebut tidak mencerminkan PKKU, dan itu akan mempengaruhi di aspek PPN. Yang paling penting adalah menurut pendapat kami adalah terkait dengan alokasi atau atribusi koreksi hanya aspek PPN ini hanya dibolehkan apabila atribusi yang dilakukan oleh pemeriksa untuk penjualan saja. Jadi untuk transaksi pembelian, transaksi selain penjualan, dan atas penjualan tersebut juga dapat diidentifikasi berapa harga yang seharusnya wajar, maka memang dibolehkan berdasarkan PMK 172, maka DJP diberikan kewenangan untuk melakukan koreksi di dalam konteks PPN. Dan menjadi catatan buat kita bersama adalah tentu saja terutama untuk transaksi komoditas ataupun transaksi yang menggunakan CAP dalam transaksi penjualan, tentu saja ini yang menjadi perhatian, karena di sisi yang lain ketika Bapak Ibu katakan disampaikan oleh Pak Nobel ada 8 metode gitu ya yang kita pilih paling appropriate gitu ya, tetapi memang ada implikasi kewajiban ataupun Bapak Ibu harus memperhatikan bahwa setelah menggunakan metode CAP dalam transaksi penjualan, konsekuensinya adalah DJP juga dapat melakukan penyesuaian dalam konteks PPN. Next slide. Terkait dengan corresponding adjustment, jadi di dalam PMK 172 corresponding adjustment dalam konteks transaksi domestik itu juga ditegaskan, dan hal ini kami melihat bahwa suatu hal yang langkah maju buat teman-teman DJP, karena buat wajib pajak, buat kita bersama ini kita butuhkan adalah keadilan, terutama dalam penerapan corresponding adjustment dalam transaksi domestik, sehingga kami berharap juga teman-teman DJP juga dalam melakukan kewenangan tersebut dengan menggunakan kewenangan atas primary adjustment tersebut juga benar-benar memperhatikan aspek-aspek terkait penerapan PKKU, sehingga hal ini tidak akan menimbulkan perdebatan antara satu KPP dengan KPP lain. Dan buat wajib pajak tentu saja menjadi penting adalah kepastian, jadi mungkin menjadi perhatian buat kita bersama. Dan yang paling penting juga terkait dengan corresponding adjustment dalam konteks cross border harus dilaksanakan melalui MAP, yang nanti akan kami jelaskan lebih lanjut. Ya.
Oh ya, sebentar, ada masalah teknis di suara. Oke, kita akan break
Kita akan tahan bereskan dulu. Bentar. Mohon maaf. Suaranya mungkin ada komplain bahwa suaranya nggak jelas.
Welcome to TaxPrime, a hub of excellence in transfer pricing and international tax services. Here, we merge unparalleled expertise with innovative strategies to navigate the complex world of taxations. Guided by over 60 accomplished advisors, including industry veterans from tax authorities, TaxPrime stands as a leader in transfer pricing and international tax consultancy. We are proud of our exceptional more than 90% success rate in resolving transfer pricing disputes, reflecting our dedication to delivering accurate and effective tax solutions. Recognized by World Tax and the International Tax Review, our expertise is acknowledged and respected globally. TaxPrime effectively integrates ESG principles into a broad spectrum of services, complying with sustainability guidelines and transfer pricing regulations, and provides a complete range of services through our global network, including transfer pricing planning, compliance, and dispute resolution to ensure adherence to regulations and diminish tax disputes, facilitating assured and adept navigations in the ever-changing global tax environment. TaxPrime excels in offering expert support for advanced pricing agreements and mutual agreement procedures, as well as providing specialized assistance in transaction tax and business advisory and BEPS actions plan readiness. We specialize in navigating the complexity of APA strategic planning for transfer pricing compliance and skillfully manage MAP-related tax treaty disputes, focusing on resolutions and implementations to streamline international tax strategies and reduce tax conflicts. TaxPrime is at the forefront of international tax reform, adeptly guiding business through the OECD's BEPS action plans, including the pivotal Global Minimum Tax Pillar 2 implementations. With the launch of our tax transaction and business advisory subdivisions, we are expanding our expertise to include specialized guidance in business restructuring, mergers and acquisition, showcasing our commitment to evolving and enhancing our tax advisory services. Step into the future with TaxPrime, where expert tax strategies meet the dynamic needs of your business. We are more than just advisor, we are your partners in navigating the intricate world of tax and transfer pricing. TaxPrime, synonymous with excellence in tax solutions.
Pusing banget gue. Penghitungan natura pajak udah rumit, banyak banget lagi. Aduh, itu kategorinya apa sih? Deductible atau enggak ya? Coba cek PMK 66 dulu deh. Aduh, itu batasannya berapa sih? Buka PMK 66 lagi deh. Tunggu, karyawan penerima natura di perusahaan ada berapa banyak ya? 7.000 orang. Banyak banget.
Lagi hitung natura ya? Ribet banget ya? Kita harus klasifikasiin mana yang dapat dibiayakan dan yang tidak dapat dibiayakan. Kita juga harus hitung jenis kriteria pajaknya. Kita juga harus buat perhitungan tiap bulan, setahun, dan per cabang. Kita juga harus kirim bukti potong pajak ke masing-masing pegawai lewat email. Dan belum lagi kita harus...
Coba aja ada software yang bisa ngitung natura otomatis.
Udah ada tahu pakai TaxPrime Teknologi Human Capital aja. Cukup dengan tinggal rekam mudah loh. Input data udah langsung dihitung tuh sama software dan dapat diintegrasikan dengan sistem payroll perusahaan loh. Datanya aman dan yang pasti biayanya juga terjangkau loh.
Emang boleh semudah itu?
Langsung ke websitenya aja.
Welcome to TaxPrime, a hub of excellence in transfer pricing and international tax services. Here, we merge unparalleled expertise with innovative strategies to navigate the complex world of taxations. Guided by over 60 accomplished advisors, including industry veterans from tax authorities, TaxPrime stands as a leader in transfer pricing and international tax consultancy. We are proud of our exceptional more than 90% success rate in resolving transfer pricing disputes, reflecting our dedication to delivering accurate and effective tax solutions. Recognized by World Tax and the International Tax Review, our expertise is acknowledged and respected globally. TaxPrime effectively integrates ESG principles into a broad spectrum of services, complying with sustainability guidelines and transfer pricing regulations, and provides a complete range of services through our global network, including transfer pricing planning, compliance, and dispute resolution to ensure adherence to regulations and diminish tax disputes, facilitating assured and adept navigations in the ever-changing global tax environment. TaxPrime excels in offering expert support for advanced pricing agreements and mutual agreement procedures, as well as providing specialized assistance in transaction tax and business advisory and BEPS action plan readiness. We specialize in navigating the complexity of APA strategic planning for transfer pricing compliance and skillfully manage MAP-related tax treaty disputes, focusing on resolutions and implementations to streamline international tax strategies and reduce tax conflicts. TaxPrime is at the forefront of international tax reform, adeptly guiding business through the OECD's BEPS action plans, including the pivotal Global Minimum Tax Pillar 2 implementations. With the launch of our tax transaction and business advisory subdivisions, we are expanding our expertise to include specialized guidance in business restructuring, mergers, and acquisition, showcasing our commitment to evolving and enhancing our tax advisory services. Step into the future with TaxPrime, where expert tax strategies meet the dynamic needs of your business. We are more than just advisor. We are your partners in navigating the intricate world of tax and transfer pricing. TaxPrime, synonymous with excellence in tax solutions.
Pusing banget gue. Penghitungan natura pajak udah rumit, banyak banget lagi. Aduh, itu kategorinya apa sih? Deductible atau enggak ya? Coba cek PMK 66 dulu deh. Aduh, itu batasannya berapa sih? Buka PMK 66 lagi deh. Tunggu, karyawan penerima natura di perusahaan ada berapa banyak ya? 7.000 orang. Banyak banget.
Lagi hitung natura ya? Ribet banget ya? Kita harus klasifikasiin mana yang dapat dibiayakan dan yang tidak dapat dibiayakan. Kita juga harus hitung jenis kriteria pajaknya. Kita juga harus buat perhitungan tiap bulan, setahun, dan per cabang. Kita juga harus kirim bukti potong pajak ke masing-masing pegawai lewat email. Dan belum lagi kita harus...
Coba aja ada software yang bisa ngitung natura otomatis.
Udah ada tahu pakai TaxPrime Teknologi Human Capital aja. Cukup dengan tinggal rekam mudah loh. Input data udah langsung dihitung tuh sama software dan dapat diintegrasikan dengan sistem payroll perusahaan loh. Datanya aman dan yang pasti biayanya juga terjangkau loh.
Emang boleh semudah itu?
Langsung ke websitenya aja.
kesediaan Bapak Ibu untuk menunggu kami. Akan kami lanjutkan penjelasan kami. Jadi kami telah sampaikan terkait dengan adjustment. Di slide yang akan kami jelaskan berikut ini kami coba susun dalam bentuk skema yang akan membantu memahami bagaimana penerapan terkait dengan corresponding adjustment. Next slide please. Baik, dalam slide ini tadi kami sudah sampaikan tentang mekanisme atas corresponding adjustment. Kita asumsikan terdapat ada 2 KPP, dalam ini KPPA yang melakukan pemeriksaan atas PTA, lalu ada KPPB yang juga menjadi lawan transaksi atas transaksi PTA. Atas SKP yang diterbitkan oleh KPPA, maka perlu dilihat apakah wajib pajak setuju dengan koreksi transfer pricing yang dilakukan oleh teman-teman pemeriksa. Kalau iya, maka pertanyaannya adalah apakah terdapat keberatan atau surat keberatan yang diajukan oleh wajib pajak dalam hal ini. Dalam hal memang wajib pajak setuju dan tidak dilanjutkan dengan permohonan keberatan, maka atas primary adjustment tersebut dapat dimohonkan melalui pemberitahuan kepada KPPB, yang nantinya KPPB akan melaksanakan langkah-langkah. Di antaranya adalah mereka akan memeriksa terkait dengan apakah atas tahun pajak tersebut sudah diaudit atau tidak, lalu relevansi atas tax year yang di-assess tersebut sudah diterima atau belum, dan apakah juga terdapat surat keberatan ataupun penyelesaian sengketa secara domestik yang dilakukan oleh wajib pajak. Dalam hal memang tidak terpenuhi atau artinya memang sudah memenuhi persyaratan tersebut, maka PB akan dapat melaksanakan corresponding adjustment. Next slide. Bapak Ibu, tadi kami sudah jelaskan yang mencoba menjelaskan terkait dengan perubahan-perubahan poin-poin penting dari chapter 2 sampai dengan chapter 6, maka di bagian ini kami jelaskan terkait dengan chapter 7 dan chapter 8 terkait dengan aspek pencegahan dan penyelesaian sengketa. Beberapa hal yang perlu di-highlight adalah yang pertama, next slide, bahwa MAP dapat dilakukan secara paralel dengan resolusi domestik, artinya wajib pajak dapat diperbolehkan secara paralel untuk memasukkan atau mensubmit surat keberatan dan lain sebagainya. Hal ini sejalan dengan PP 50 dan Undang-Undang Harmonisasi. Next slide. Secara umum, atas SKPPB harus diterbitkan atau harus diterapkan secara konsisten, baik oleh wajib pajak melalui self-assessment dengan cara pembetulan SPT ataupun dilakukan dengan pembetulan SKP ataupun keputusan keberatan yang dilakukan oleh Direktorat Jenderal Pajak. Slide selanjutnya, dalam hal wajib pajak menyampaikan surat keberatan, banding, dan peninjauan kembali, maka atas surat keputusan persetujuan bersama tersebut harus mempertimbangkan penghitungan pajak yang terutang berdasarkan surat keputusan keberatan, pelaksanaan banding, dan peninjauan kembali. Next slide. Hal yang perlu diketahui Bapak Ibu juga, terdapat 2 hal yang penting yang kami highlight. Yang pertama adalah bahwa dalam PMK 172 ini sudah diatur mengenai kemungkinan wajib pajak dapat submit atau memohonkan multilateral APA. Hal ini sejalan dengan OECD Multilateral APA Guidelines ataupun klarifikasi yang sudah dilakukan oleh OECD yang dikeluarkan di tahun lalu Februari 2023. Jadi ini hal yang cukup positif, DJP cukup proaktif melihat perkembangan di International Tax dan Transfer Pricing Regulation, lalu coba diaplikasikan dalam PMK 172. Dan yang poin kedua adalah terdapat kemungkinan dalam hal bilateral APA multilateral APA tidak mencapai kesepakatan atau wajib pajak melakukan pencabutan atas permohonan bilateral APA ataupun multilateral APA tersebut, maka masih dimungkinkan wajib pajak untuk mengajukan unilateral APA. Hal ini tidak diatur sama sekali dalam ketentuan PMK 22 ya. Jadi benar-benar hal yang baru dan ini menjadi opsi bagi wajib pajak untuk mempertimbangkan opsi mana, apakah melakukan melanjutkan bilateral APA ataupun melakukan pengajuan unilateral APA. Lalu bagian selanjutnya kami juga mau sampaikan bahwa PMK 172 juga memberikan pengaturan terkait dengan jangka waktu untuk menyampaikan kapan harus menyampaikan pembaruan EPA. Dalam ketentuan lama PMK 22, wajib pajak diwajibkan untuk menyampaikan 12 bulan sampai dengan 6 bulan sebelum periode EPA tersebut selesai. Dalam hal ini contohnya adalah untuk periode EPA, pembaruan EPA adalah tahun 2025, dan periode EPA berdasarkan EPA yang dicakup dalam kesepakatan EPA sebelumnya adalah tahun pajak 2023, tahun pajak yang terakhir. Maka wajib pajak harus menyampaikan EPA tersebut dalam waktu yang sudah ditentukan. Tetapi dengan pengaturan PMK 172, maka wajib pajak boleh menyampaikan sampai dengan bulan Juni 2024. Mungkin hal itu yang dapat kami sampaikan. Kalau ada pertanyaan, kami persilahkan.
Terima kasih banyak Pak Dewo dan Pak Nopri buat presentasinya. Banyak sekali hal baru ternyata di dalam PMK ini, dan saya yakin bahwa akan banyak pertanyaan dari teman-teman peserta, Bapak Ibu peserta webinar. Kalau yang saya bisa catat misalnya ternyata tahapannya lebih rinci, panduannya juga jadi PSM bisa gross, kemudian secondary bisa dibatalkan dengan repatriasi, dan VAT bisa lebih terbatas. Nah, kita sekarang langsung ke tanya jawab. Nanti Pak Nopri dan Pak Dewo mungkin bisa saling melengkapi jawabannya, tapi ini mungkin karena tadi pertanyaan pertama ini dari Pak Geraldi, percetakan. Sektornya percetakan, kemudian apakah wajib pajak dalam 1 bulan, apakah wajib menyampaikan tipidok dalam 1 bulan ketika diminta? Terus apa bedanya dengan peraturan sebelumnya? Monggo, silakan Pak Nopri duluan, Pak.
Oke, baik, terima kasih Pak Bayu. Ya mungkin Pak Geraldi, kalau untuk penyampaian tipidok, kalau di aturan yang lama itu terkait AR itu berdasarkan SP2DK itu cuma 2 minggu ya. Sedangkan kalau audit pemeriksaan itu 1 bulan. Tapi dengan adanya peraturan baru ini PMK 172 ini, baik dalam tingkat pengawasan kepatuhan di tingkat AR ataupun di tingkat pemeriksaan itu diperjelas menjadi sama 1 bulan sejak saat diminta, Pak. Mungkin itu, Pak.
Oke, siap. Oh, jadi ini lebih pasti ya malah ya?
Iya.
Jadi setelah ada PMK ini, jadi kalau tipidok sebulan gitu, ada waktu buat. Kalau dulu kan kalau dalam PMK kan cuma diatur harus tersedia 4 bulan tuh Pak, setelah tahun berakhirnya tahun pajak nih. Kalau sekarang disampaikannya sebulan setelah diminta. Jadi buat bapak-bapak yang kalau memang belum diminta, segera bikinlah tipidok sebelum-sebelumnya gitu kan. Nah, sekarang pertanyaan, Pak Dewo yang mau tambahkan?
Tidak ada.
Oke. Ya. Nah, kemudian pertanyaan kedua untuk Pak Dewo dari Bu Eka. Nah, ini apa yang dimaksud repatriasi pada secondary dan corresponding adjustment?
Baik. Baik, terima kasih. Terkait dengan repatriasi tadi ya, memang di dalam PMK ini tidak diatur spesifik bagaimana mekanisme yang detail seperti apa gitu ya. Tetapi yang kami tahu bahwa sepanjang wajib pajak sudah melakukan repatriasi dalam terutama konteks misalnya EPA misalnya, dalam hal ini dapat menggunakan debit note ataupun metode pembukuan yang memang sudah dilakukan oleh wajib pajak, maka atas repatriasi tersebut tidak dapat dilakukan secondary adjustment ya, dapat dilakukan secondary adjustment. Mekanisme spesifik belum diatur, tapi yang kami ketahui bahwa tentu saja akan ada pengawasan dari teman-teman DJP, karena artinya akan menimbulkan isu ketika misalnya tidak dilakukan pengawasan bagaimana repatriasi yang seharusnya dan seperti apa. Tentu saja kita harus menunggu dari teman-teman DJP terkait dengan informasi ataupun peraturan pelaksanaannya.
Oke. Jadi repatriasi artinya selisih lebih tadi dikembalikan gitu.
Betul, dikembalikan. Entah melalui debit note ataupun melalui transfer gitu ya. Tetapi memang pengaturannya belum spesifik ya dalam PMK 172.
Oke.
Ya.
Pak Nopri ada yang tambahan, Pak?
Cukup, Pak.
Oke. Nah, tapi kalau terkait dengan secondary kan kalau repatriasi itu kan dulu ingat ada di dalam teks amnesti gitu. Artinya uang tadi harus di Indonesia, stay-nya berapa lama itu belum ada
belum ada pengaturan. Jadi memang yang tadi saya sampaikan Pak Bayu, jadi memang di dalam PMK 172 tidak atau belum diatur spesifik terkait dengan mekanisme monitoring ya. Sebagaimana kalau di tax amnesty terdapat monitoring, tetapi dalam ketentuan ini di dalam PMK belum diatur. Kita mungkin menunggu dari teman-teman DJP untuk pengaturan yang lebih spesifik.
Oke, nah kalau masalah ini ada lagi nih pertanyaan dari yang pengalaman dikoreksi karena royalti dan secondary adjustment. Kira-kira dasar hukumnya apa kok bisa melakukan secondary adjustment dan apakah itu sudah ada sebelum PMK 172? Nah, kira-kira apa Pak? Secondary adjustment dari pemeriksa itu apa ceritanya sebelum ada PMK 172 kok sudah banyak dilakukan?
Baik, jadi untuk jadi terkait dengan secondary adjustment, kalau Bapak Ibu lihat dasar hukumnya, kalau kita lihat kan dari pasal 18 ayat 3 Undang-Undang PPH, lalu di PMK 22 sebenarnya juga sudah diatur ya, meskipun memang belum clear, belum cukup lugas, dan memang ini menjadi sengketa yang dihadapi oleh wajib pajak dalam hal terdapat primary adjustment, maka DJP berwenang untuk melakukan secondary adjustment. Tetapi saya pikir memang ini menjadi isu atau menjadi perdebatan terkait pengaturan mana yang digunakan gitu ya. Kalau misalnya kita berdiskusi dengan teman-teman auditor, mereka berpandangan bahwa terdapat ketentuan yang mengatur yaitu pasal 18 ayat 3 dan PMK 22 sudah mengatur secara spesifik terkait dengan secondary adjustment tersebut.
Oke, siap. Wah, banyak sekali pertanyaan. Ini hari ini ada pertanyaan lagi dari Ibu Anggela. Ini menanyakan, ini buat Pak Nopri sebetulnya ini, apa namanya, bagaimana jika perusahaan yang belum go public, wah agak jauh nih, bagaimana jika perusahaan go public jual saham, bagaimana penerapan business valuation-nya?
Ya, kalau kembali lagi ke apa yang sudah saya jelaskan sebelumnya, bahwa terkait aset valuation ataupun business valuation, yaitu sudah ada aturan tersendiri ya. DJP sudah mengeluarkan, kalau nggak salah tadi PMK 79 ya. Ya mungkin kita harus lihat merefer ke situ dalam hal penilaian terkait transaksi tersebut. Ini ada tambahan Pak Dewo?
Ya. Bahkan bahwa kalau terkait dengan valuasi tersebut memang di PMK 79 sudah diatur. Pada prinsipnya kalau kita lihat mungkin yang digunakan dalam PMK 79, kalau mungkin Bapak Ibu juga pernah membaca dari Darmodaran ya, dari profesor di US, banyak diatur terkait dengan bagaimana valuasi, terutama valuasi atas transaksi penjualan saham, diantaranya mungkin juga menggunakan diskon cash flow dan lain sebagainya ya yang akan digunakan. Jadi metodenya banyak dan tentu saja nanti dari teman-teman DJP pasti juga akan melibatkan tim penilai ya dalam hal ini ya untuk melakukan valuasi tersebut.
Oke, ya, terima kasih banyak. Nah, banyak sekali pertanyaan ini, saya lagi milih-milih satu-satu biar semua tema agak tersampaikan dan terdiskusikan dengan baik. Jadi kalau business valuation akan ikut bagaimana bisnis bergerak juga Pak ya. Jadi tidak sekedar artinya bahwa DJP punya PMK 79, tetapi wajib pajak juga mungkin dapat menggunakan KJPP atau bagaimana atau dapat mencari informasi penilaian yang jalan.
Ya, kembali lagi ke seperti bagaimana bisnis berjalan pada transaksi independen Pak Bayu. Jadi seperti kalau di independen ya pakai valuation, ya harusnya pakai valuation sih.
Oke.
Ya.
Baik. Oke. Nah, ini ada satu lagi nih. Jika pemeriksa tidak melakukan langkah pemeriksaan PKKU. Nah, ini kan sebenarnya langkah-langkah itu sudah ada sejak PMK 22 nih Pak. Nah, dalam menentukan kembali besarnya bahasa atau biaya untuk menghitung penghasilan kena pajak. Wah, ini bunyi pasal. Nah, apakah PMK 172 dapat dianggap tidak terpenuhi sehingga koreksi tadi harus dibatalkan gitu Pak. Jadi kalau tadi kan Pak Nopri cerita bahwa kalau wajib pajak itu kan harus ikut tahapan PKKU kan, termasuk tadi Pak Dewo menambahkan tahapan pendahuluan untuk proses itu. Nah, kalau tahapannya ternyata tidak dilakukan oleh pemeriksa bagaimana? Apakah itu bisa kita sampaikan, oh ini
Ya.
pasal 3617 tidak terpenuhi, jadi mestinya kalau dibatalkan gitu.
Ya. Jadi kalau dilihat dari PMK 172 kan salah satu aspek yang penting adalah keadilan baik dari wajib pajak dan DJP, dan juga kepastian hukum bagaimana atas suatu transaksi itu dilakukan analisa dengan menerapkan prinsip PKKU tadi, dan atas tahapan tadi memang diwajibkan untuk keduanya, dari wajib pajak dan dari DJP ya. Jadi tentu saja ini akan menjadi menarik, artinya buat wajib pajak tentu saja harus bisa membuktikan, mendokumentasikan langkah-langkah tadi, langkah-langkah pendahuluan dan implementasi, dan juga di sisi yang lain dari teman-teman DJP berdasarkan PMK 172 ini juga kami lihat bahwa memang diharapkan juga dalam melakukan evaluasi dalam pemeriksaan juga sejalan ya. Artinya tentu saja kalau memang langkah yang dilakukan wajib pajak, maka dalam konteks prinsip keadilan dan sesuai dengan pengaturan yang sudah diatur di PMK 172, maka memang wajib pajak juga harus diakui sudah memenuhi PKKU gitu ya. Jadi kejelasan, keadilan, dan kepastian tadi menurut pendapat saya itu menjadi penting ya. Jadi ya.
Baik, jadi kalau tadi masalah keadilan dan kepastian, berarti menurut Bapak ini memang PMK ini berlaku baik buat WP maupun buat DJP gitu Pak?
Betul, ya, betul.
Jadi ini Indonesia Transfer Guidelines
for and taxpayer, ya, betul.
Nah, Pak Nopri ada tambahan Pak Nopri?
Ya, ya benar sekali apa yang dijelaskan oleh Pak Dewo barusan. Jadi sebenarnya kewajaran itu kan adalah hasil akhirnya ya. Jadi ada proses-proses yang harus diikuti, tahap-tahapan, seperti misalnya melakukan comparability analysis, melakukan analisis industri. Jadi itu semua harus diikuti agar dapat menghasilkan harga wajar yang tepat gitu loh. Jadi ketika ini berlaku bagi kedua belah pihak, baik itu wajib pajak ataupun bagi DJP. Jadi ketika wajib pajak tidak melaksanakan itu, ya harusnya juga DJP juga harus melakukan sesuai dengan tahap-tahap itu sebelum pada kesimpulan akhirnya, Pak.
Ya, mungkin sedikit menambahkan ya, kami juga patut mengapresiasi ada beberapa case yang kami handle dalam proses. Kami melihat juga teman-teman berlah keberatan juga sekarang ini benar-benar memperhatikan, jadi melihat dari dua sisi, jadi bagaimana apakah wajib pajak sudah menerapkan PKKU sesuai dengan ketentuan, dan tidak semata-mata melihat posisi ataupun pemeriksaan yang dilakukan oleh teman-teman pemeriksa ya. Jadi sebenarnya dalam praktek yang kami hadapi beberapa waktu belakangan ini juga menunjukkan bahwa memang senyatanya teman-teman DJP, teman-teman pelah keberatan juga sudah melakukan ya, artinya melihat benar nggak yang dilakukan oleh teman-teman pemeriksa dengan mengevaluasi apa yang sudah kami lakukan sesuai atau tidak, dan menggunakan transfer pricing documentation menjadi basis untuk melakukan evaluasi tersebut gitu Mas.
Siap. Oh ini mundur lagi nih ke hubungan sewa. Sekarang pertanyaannya adalah mengenai hubungan sewa, apakah ada batasan atau batasan dokumen yang diakui nih saat satu WP menyatakan diri memiliki hubungan sewa dari WP yang lain? Karena kan tadi salah satu yang disampaikan Pak Nopri, kalau satu ngaku maka yang lain juga jadi hubungan sewa. Gimana Pak? Batasnya apa? Dokumen apa cukup laporan keuangan atau cukup apa gitu Pak?
Jadi memang ada perbedaan kriteria ya, tapi dengan adanya PMK 172 ini sepertinya sudah mencerminkan itu Pak, karena definisi kontrol yang ada di PMK 172 ini sudah eksplisit menyatakan bahwa apabila salah satu pihak menyatakan mempunyai hubungan istimewa dengan pihak yang lain, ya itu berarti telah memenuhi bahwa ini harus dilakukan memenuhi skop dari hubungan istimewa, seperti itu Pak.
Oke. Oh tadi Bapak kan berarti kan intinya adalah wajib pajak itu mesti konsisten nih, gimana berbuat di laporan keuangan hubungan sewa, berarti di SPT juga harusnya ngaku atau sebaliknya gitu Pak?
Iya benar sekali Pak.
Pak Dewo ada yang tambahan?
Ya mungkin sedikit menambahkan, jadi hal yang sebenarnya memang ini sudah diatur di PMK 22 ya, tetapi kita melihat bahwa tidak semua wajib pajak itu aware bahwa ada perluasan dalam cakupan hubungan istimewa. Tadi sudah disampaikan oleh Pak Nopri bahwa sepanjang ada lawan transaksi atau sepanjang pihak lain mengakui sebagai pihak berelasi dalam konteks secara finansial ataupun secara komersial, tidak diatur spesifik apakah harus berupa laporan keuangan, tetapi tentu saja ini akan kembali lagi ke bagaimana wajib pajak dalam menjalankan bisnis, dokumen-dokumen yang relevan seperti apa, misalnya dalam kontrak dan lain sebagainya juga akan jadi identifikasi untuk bisa mengevaluasi apakah benar statement independent parties itu benar ya gitu ya. Yang perlu menjadi highlight mungkin di kesempatan ini adalah mungkin cara untuk evaluasi terkait dengan penerapan PKKU yang menjadi critical point sebelum kita melakukan analisa transaksi afiliasi tentu saja adalah identifikasi siapa saja yang menjadi pihak berelasi. Nah, ini yang menurut pendapat kami untuk coba dievaluasi kembali Bapak Ibu untuk melihat, untuk mungkin berkoordinasi kalau misalnya dalam satu grup untuk memastikan apakah memang definisi antara satu entity dengan entity lain terkait dengan atau klasifikasi independen atau afiliasi juga harus konsisten dan harus diselesaikan baik secara komersial ataupun secara finansial. Artinya konsistensi menjadi penting untuk Bapak Ibu untuk melihat dan kembali lagi untuk mengevaluasi berdasarkan cakupan related party yang sudah diatur dalam PMK 172. Demikian Mas Bayu.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Dewo, Pak Nopri, jawaban dan diskusi yang menarik sekali, tetapi ternyata waktu untuk diskusi sudah habis, jadi kita sekarang simpulannya adalah bahwa PMK 172 ini sangat komprehensif dan meskipun ada beberapa item yang tadi disampaikan perlu diklarifikasi lebih jauh, tetapi PMK ini sudah cukup menjawab banyak sekali pertanyaan dan hal-hal yang sebelumnya tidak diatur yang menjadi akan membuat wajib pajak dan DJP juga menjadi lebih pasti dalam menerapkan PKKU, dan mudah-mudahan ke depan lanskap transfer pricing di Indonesia menjadi lebih menarik, lebih pasti, dan itu membangun kepercayaan baik bagi wajib pajak maupun bagi DJP. Mungkin itu dulu. Setelah diskusi ini masih ada sesi kedua, teman-teman. Bapak Ibu jangan kemana-mana dulu. Nanti ada update dari regional, dari Jepang dan Korea setelah break. Demikian saya sampaikan. Saya selaku moderator mengucapkan terima kasih buat pembicara dan buat Bapak Ibu peserta. Mohon maaf tadi ada kendala teknis. Terima kasih semuanya. Selamat pagi.
Family-owned businesses are the backbone of Indonesia's economy, as it comprises 95% of all businesses. At TaxPrime, we recognize that family enterprises go beyond financial transaction and business operations. They are built to create a legacy. Our team is devoted to providing personalized advisory and comprehensive family office services tailored to our client unique needs. With certified family office professionals and expertise ranging in business, legal, tax, accounting, and internal control, we ensure that our approach is holistic and aligned with your distinctive goals, purposes, and financial frameworks. Moreover, we ensure to imbue environmental, social, and governance principles to the solution we provide, ensuring your family ventures positively impact the communities and environment at large. At TaxPrime, we don't just think outside of the box. We reimagine the box as a sphere, allowing endless possibility as opposed to traditional solutions. Work with TaxPrime and let us create the foundation for the lasting family heritage.
Teknologi informasi bergerak maju dengan pesat setiap detiknya. Kemudahan mengakses informasi kapanpun dan dimanapun membuat dunia seakan ada dalam genggaman. Untuk memenuhi kebutuhan masyarakat, media dituntut untuk mampu menyampaikan informasi terbaru yang komprehensif. Selamat datang di pajak.com, portal berita yang menyajikan informasi eksklusif dan aktual seputar perpajakan, ekonomi, serta keuangan. Kunjungi kami di www.pajak.com. Teknologi informasi bergerak maju dengan pesat setiap detiknya. Kemudahan mengakses informasi kapanpun dan dimanapun membuat dunia seakan ada dalam genggaman. Untuk memenuhi kebutuhan masyarakat, media dituntut untuk mampu menyampaikan informasi terbaru yang komprehensif. Selamat datang di pajak.com, portal berita yang menyajikan informasi eksklusif dan aktual seputar perpajakan, ekonomi, serta keuangan. Kunjungi kami di www.pajak.com.
In the first session, we have learned quite a lot with regard to the changes from the old regulation to the Minister of Finance Regulation number 172/2023, which basically we can say that in the new Indonesian transfer pricing guidelines, because it has some changes in the transfer pricing practices, MAP and also APA. Now in the second session, interestingly, we will hear more and explore about international perspective on the highlighted changes, and also we will also hear some updates with regard to our colleagues from other jurisdiction regarding transfer pricing and international tax. So for that, we already been accompanied with two distinguished speakers from Japan and South Korea, two of our most important economic partners with Indonesia. Please allow me to introduce both of them. The first speaker is Mr. Yuri Numata. Mr. Numata is a partner at KPMG Japan. He's been selected at World's Leading Practitioner and also Rising Star in 2015. He had been based in Washington, D.C. from 2015 to 2018 to help negotiate with IRS with regard to multinational companies. And then Mr. Numata also involved numerously in the APA proceeding with the IRS, United States, DGT of Indonesia, also the Chinese State Tax Administration, and also the National Tax Agency Japan. Especially for APA discussion and negotiation with DGT of Indonesia, Mr. Numata has also been working collaboratively with TaxPrime. The second speaker I'm proudly presenting Steve Min-ho Kim from Lee & Co., a senior foreign attorney which specialty lies in the transfer pricing and international tax. Mr. Kim has around 15 years of experience in the field of international tax and transfer pricing and has been awarded as Transfer Pricing Rising Star and also as well as the Transfer Pricing Leader of the Year from the International Tax Review. Mr. Kim is the member of International Bar Association as well as International Fiscal Association, and right now co-chairing the Taxation Committee at AmCham Korea, and also frequently invited to speak at IFA event. So please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Yuri Numata and Mr. Steve Min-ho Kim. Hi Yuri-san. Hi Steve.
Great seeing you, everyone.
It's very wonderful to see you. Thank you very much for joining us in this great opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, great. As you know, Indonesia has already just released the new Indonesian transfer pricing guidelines, which codifying the old regulation and modified some things. Some things are quite insignificant. That's why we want to ask both of you regarding how do you see these changes and how do you think it should be followed up by the taxpayers and also international taxpayers with regard to doing business in Indonesia. So I will provide each of you like allotted time of 15 minutes, and then I will provide you with as much as possible time to respond to the changes that we already provided to you before. So the first opportunity will be given to Yuri-san. Yuri-san, please kindly unmute your Zoom so we can hear you. Okay. I still cannot hear you, I'm sorry. Okay. 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 Steve, can you hear Yuri?
No, can maybe I can start off with
if
you don't mind.
Yuri-san, maybe I will just let Steve to speak first, and then after that we will get back to you. Okay? Is it okay? Okay. Steve, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to this wonderful webinar, and I'm very happy to be participating as one of the guest speaker today. My name is Steve Kim, as introduced by Bobby, and I'm a tax partner at Lee & Co., one of the premier and full-service law firm out of South Korea. It is dated back to 2018, when I was tasked with the APA representation for my Korean conglomerates. And I was looking for a right advisor in the Indonesian market. And TaxPrime stood out to me due to their unique background and expertise. And we team up ever since then, and we've been in trenches together for many, many years. Through the journey with TaxPrime, I have learned a host of the Indonesian income tax law, APA, TP documentation regulation, and I have delved into each and every laws and regulation to best serve my client in South Korea. So with this background, it is quite pleasantly surprised that the Indonesian government put out a massive TP regulation overhaul. And I hope this will serve as more elucidating and clear TP guidance for foreign invested company in Indonesia. So without further ado, let me get right into today's main discussion. I'll go from the macro to micro when it comes to my response to Ministry of Finance Regulation 172. So my general macro response to the transfer pricing amendment is that, first of all, it looks like a full-blown overhaul of the TP regulation, encompassing granular TP-related topics such as arm's length principle, application of TP methodologies, APA, primary adjustment, corresponding adjustment, repatriation of adjusted income to avoid the secondary adjustment, so on and so forth. So, and second of all, based on my personal experience dealing with Indonesian transfer matters for many years with help of TaxPrime, there have been some unclarity with respect to the Indonesian transfer pricing regulation, especially the procedural AP procedural aspect of the law and the regulation. So now with the Ministry of Finance Regulation 172 in place, I hope a foreign invested company in Indonesia will have a more tax certainty and increase the visibility when it comes to transfer pricing, planning, implementation, and assessment by the DGT going forward. So now going into the micro one by one, I had a chance to skim through the MoFR 172, get my head around it and what's in there. And from my perspective, at least, as a tax and TP practitioner who deals with a lot of Indonesian transfer pricing issues for Korean conglomerates, three topics really stick out to me when I first saw it. The first topic is the application of the arm's length principle. In general, I get the impression that the Indonesian government is trying to keep up with the OECD development to align their regulation with OECD TP guideline in light of the fact that they put much emphasis on the industry analysis and compatibility analysis and so on. That said, there are a few interesting points in regard to this arm's length principle that has been put out. The new clause under the MoFR 172 prescribing the preference for choosing less complex parties as a tested party while keeping option open for more complex parties based on the data availability. So I think the proviso here stating that they keep options open for more complex parties quite interesting to me based on in light of my own past experience, because DGT always challenged the selection of the tested party to its favor. So my personal take on this is that this may allow the DGT to remain aggressive or to become even more aggressive in making a TP assessment with this selection of tested parties. Because I always, in my past experience, I always try to convince the DGT that tested party should be Indonesian entity with our Korean headquarters located in South Korea. But they always try to flip over. The test party should be Indonesian company and Korean company, and Indonesian companies are more entrepreneur. So this is quite interesting to me. And second of all, using single year data for comparable. That point, in Korean TP regulation, as well as the OECD TP guideline, as many of you already know, it is not systematic requirement for using a multiple year analysis. And by no means it is a mandatory, therefore. In this regard, what MoFR 172 is prescribing is in line with the OECD TP guideline and Korean TP regulation. That being said, in practice, regardless of the jurisdiction, the default is that we always use multi-year analysis, assuming that multi-year analysis improve the quality of analysis, considering the different business cycle and product life cycle, etc. So however, the nuance here is very crucial, and it is likely that taxpayer could be challenged by DGT in case multi-year analysis is applied without any consideration of a single-year analysis. My third point under the arm's length principle is profit split method. From my experience, DGT does not easily accept one-sided approach, such as TNMM, and always eager to secure more tax revenue using more aggressive methodologies such as PSM. Even if they do not apply PSM at the end of the day, they always use it as a leverage to increase profitability of Indonesian entity under the TNMM approach. So so it is not very surprising to me of this profit split method new clause under the 172 is because two reasons. One, we had an update in 17 and 22 OECD TP guideline. There's been an update on PSM, so it's very natural to update such a regulation in an Indonesian regulation. And number two, PSM is one of the, like I said, one of the DGT's favorite avenue when it comes to TP assessment and trying to use it as a leverage. So that's my answer for the profit split method. So Beside the arm's length principle, the second topic I would like to briefly touch upon is the repatriation of the adjusted income. What really stuck out to me was creating an avenue for taxpayers to avoid the secondary adjustment by repatriating adjusted income back to the Indonesian entity. So I had this issue when I dealt with the Korean Indonesian or Indonesian Korean bilateral APA, where Indonesian entities' income should be upward adjusted. So in this case, I had no idea how to avoid the secondary adjustment, leading to the deemed dividend subject to the withholding tax, because there was no timeline as to until when the adjusted income should be repatriated. Exactly, right? So now I think it is prescribed in the MoFR 172, but it looks like it is at least not crystal clear to me in the context of the APA implementation, as there won't be tax assessment matter in APA context, because as far as I understand, the deadline is until the issuance of the tax assessment letter. It has to be repatriated to avoid the secondary adjustment. But in the context of APA, I'm not really clear about this. But in Korea, to introduce our regulation, taxpayers are given 90 days for the repatriation from the notice of NTS, and along with the repatriation of the adjusted income, imputed interest on the repatriation should be paid to the Korean entity to avoid the secondary adjustment. So here, not only the repatriation, but also the imputed interest should be repatriated as well. So last item I would like to weigh in on under the MoFR 172 is exemption of penalties on the application of the agreed APA for the rollback years, which may involve additional tax payment in Indonesia. So I had personal experience working with TaxPrime on my client's APA case, and this is this was a happy ending story with tremendous help of TaxPrime. But I was notified by the TaxPrime at the very end of the APA project that the regional tax office, not the DGT headquarters, handling APA, has the authority to exempt penalties. And there is even possibility that interest may not be exempted due to the non-existence of the explicit law and regulation prescribing such exemption. So I was totally banking on the TaxPrime's negotiation with regional tax office. And unfortunately, we were able to get that exemption of penalty thanks to the TaxPrime's great connection with DGT. But it was a really difficult situation for me as an advisor, since without an exemption of the penalty, the additional tax payment that my client would have to pay will be significantly more, in which case the attractiveness of APA will be significantly lower from our client's perspective. So now with the explicit regulation in place, there is all the more reasons that taxpayer with a significant related party transaction should pursue an APA. Unlike Indonesian amendment, unfortunately, Korea does not allow exemption of penalty when they make an upward adjustment as a result of the conclusion of APA for the rollback years. And I personally hope that Korea will adopt the same approach as Indonesia in the near future to increase the attractiveness of the APA. Thank you. I think that I cover pretty much I need to cover. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Steve. I will get back to you again in the Q&A session. Thank you very much for insights. Very insightful. I believe the viewers want to explore more with us with regard to your tacit knowledge with regard to Korea and Indonesian relation, especially in tax. Okay, now I'm gonna move to our second speaker, Mr. Yuri Numata.
So ready? Bobby, do you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you, Yuri. Thank you.
All right,
sure.
So I'll get started.
The floor is yours, Yuri.
All right, thank you. So hi everyone, as introduced by Bobby, I'm a transfer pricing partner from KPMG Japan. I've been working with TaxPrime on various bilateral APA cases, and all of them are going very, very successfully. And so I'm so honored to be here today, speaking in front of such a large number of people. So speaking of MoFR 172 from the standpoint of Japan, I believe it generally seems a very positive development for Japanese companies operating in Indonesia. I'm actually I think it's kind of similar to South Korea, but I've heard more than several times that from my Japanese companies operating in Indonesia that the transfer pricing regulation as well as DGT's enforcement in Indonesia is very difficult. Therefore, the Japanese parent company also thought that the Indonesian transfer pricing is very, very difficult to understand. However, when I heard about the detail about MoFR 172, my first impression is that it gives a lot of clarity and certainty to the taxpayers from various aspects, which also include the Japanese companies operating in Indonesia. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the likely impact from the Japanese standpoint today. I knew that Kim-san already mentioned that the Indonesian transfer price regulation as well as the enforcement had been conceptually consistent with the OECD guideline. And interestingly, Japan also adopts the OECD transfer pricing guideline as the basis of the transfer pricing regulation and the enforcement. Therefore, conceptually speaking, the transfer pricing enforcement in Indonesia shouldn't have been very difficult for the Japanese companies to understand. However, as I mentioned, I've heard several times, more than several times, that the transfer pricing regulation and the enforcement in Indonesia is very difficult. So I think it's partly because of the differences in language or culture, but I believe it is also because the regulation itself was sort of difficult to understand, and maybe for some part it seemed a little unclear to the Japanese companies. Now, MoFR 172 became effective. I believe this gives much clearer picture to the Indonesian taxpayer. The Japanese companies operating in Indonesia. Especially, there are so many Japanese companies that have entered into the bilateral AP program or maybe thinking to enter into the bilateral AP program between Indonesia and Japan. And I'm sure that MoFR 172 gives a high clarity or certainty for taxpayers that are already in or will be in the bilateral AP program as well. So again, it's an important update and development. Regarding the key changes and updates, the first thing I would like to touch upon today is the use of multi-year data. Generally, the corporate tax only focuses on a single year result of that taxable year. However, as written in the OECD guideline, oftentimes the transfer pricing or maybe the competent authority negotiation in bilateral APA or MAP is conducted using the multi-year data. So this kind of update means that domestic practice or the enforcement is getting more consistent with the CA negotiation level, which I think is great because it gives more certainty to the taxpayer in Indonesia. And secondly, as far as the bilateral APA between Indonesia and Japan concerns, we've started to see more and more, difficult cases involving complex intangible property and the complicated functional profile with probably, entrepreneurship in two different countries. So in the past, business model of most of the Japanese companies in Indonesia was relatively simple. Most of them, consider TNMM that simply calculates the arm's length profitability range for the Indonesian distributor, manufacturer, service provider, etc. as a tested party. However, we started to see very complicated or difficult cases involving complex intangible property and the complex functional profile with entrepreneurship in both countries in Indonesia and Japan. And so those cases are not applicable to the typical TNMM type of approach, and most likely need cut analysis or profit split method with the detailed analysis on the intangible property and the entrepreneurship. I understand DGT, of course, have been using these methodologies such as cut and PSM for many years already, but I sort of felt that the reason why MoFR 172 is revisiting cut and PSM now is because DGT considers that there's going to be more and more cases that should be discussed using these methodologies because situation or the business model is getting more complex. Interestingly, I've seen a similar trend in Japan recently, several years ago actually. Although it was not the direct update or the revision about methodology, such as cut or maybe PSM, many taxpayers in Japan used to misunderstand that transfer pricing is just a matter of whether the operating margin is, of the local entity is within the profitability range calculated by TNMM versus the local comparable companies. Without appropriate analyze, without not typically appropriately analyzing the entrepreneurial role as well as the intangible property involved in the related party transactions. So therefore, I took this update as a sort of message from DGT that the taxpayer should appropriately analyze the intangible property and the entrepreneurial role of the Indonesian entity to determine whether or if the profit of Indonesian entity is sufficient, or maybe Indonesian entity is appropriately compensated, which means DGT, I kind of thought that transfer pricing is not just a matter of TNMM range. So we have to take into account whether or maybe how much excess profit the Indonesian entity should earn, if there's any roles or intangible property that probably goes beyond the regular or routine companies from the database, right? Especially if there's any Japanese headquartered companies thinking to increase royalty or service fees, I highly recommend the appropriate and detailed analysis on the intangible property as well as the entrepreneurial role, who's playing the decision making and all that. In this context, it seems to me that we'll be seeing more and more transfer pricing controversy as far as the transactions between Indonesia and Japan concerned, because I think this trend of DGT is somewhat very different than the approaches or general understanding of the Japanese tax authorities. More specifically, since most of the Japanese multinational companies has its R&D facilities in Japan, and generally Japanese company centralize their intangible properties in Japan. That includes trademark, operational know-how, and technologies, and all that, maybe including patents. So the very common understanding of the regular Japanese company, as well as the regular or a lot of Japanese tax officers, is that the local entity is carrying a relatively simple function that should fit in the TNMM range. Again, this is also the common understanding of the lot of Japanese tax authorities, officers. However, as I personally, go back and forth between Indonesia and Japan for various APA cases, now I realize that the business in Indonesia is not that simple anymore. Actually, I've seen several companies that locally carries entrepreneurial role or function, such as complex decision-making function, and maybe some even develop the significant marketing intangibles, even when the manufacturing technology is originally from Japan. However, again, this is most likely far from the understanding of the Japanese tax authorities. So therefore, when this type of company, meaning that the entrepreneurial role as well as the intangible property developed locally in Indonesia, if this type of company enters into the valid APA program, it is very likely that the initial position of the Indonesia and Japan are very, very different. And therefore, it's going to be a very tough negotiation. So further, it will be very difficult for this type of taxpayer to convince that the Japanese Sector 30, convince the Japanese Sector 30 for the high profitability level in Indonesia, because they typically think that the operation in Indonesia should be simple. Therefore, that should be the tested party of the TNMM type of approach. I would assume we'll be seeing more and more controversy again for this type of company in the near future, because it seems to me that, again, DGT implicitly describes that they focus more on the local entrepreneurship as well as the local intangible property going forward. So from the perspectives of the Japanese practitioner, I would say it is getting more and more important for the taxpayer to appropriately analyze and describe its business in the local file, and get prepared for the likely or future tax audit. So the misrepresentation will lead to the significant damage in both countries. So further, especially when the Indonesian entity is making very high profit and the company is thinking to keep it in the Indonesian market, maybe the
Yuri,
so,
I think we cannot hear you. I think there's a...
Okay,
so now we
the
can.
Indonesian...
Please continue, please continue. You have around 1.5 minutes, Yuri.
Oh, okay. So from the perspective of the Japanese practitioner, I would say it's getting more and more important for the taxpayer to appropriately analyze and describe its business in the local file that the company is locally preparing. Misrepresentation will lead to a significant damage in both countries. So further, especially when the Indonesian entity is making very high profit, and if the company is thinking to keep it in Indonesia, the company should appropriately communicate or discuss with the parent company on what contributes to the high profitability in Indonesia, so that the parent company could explain it to the Japanese Sector 30. Regardless of whether it's APA or a local file type of analysis, the key going forward, it will be the appropriate representation of the facts, as well as the appropriate price setting that is consistent with the facts. So that's going to be the most important things going forward. I mean, it used to be very important as well, but it will be more and more important. So last but not least, the ex-ante approach is also something that's exactly the same as the Japanese regime. And that's something the Japanese company should be aware of. Again, this is exactly the same as how the Japanese transfer pricing regime requires. And this also clarifies that simple or a mere year-end adjustment to bring the profitability within the range is not sufficient. We should establish an appropriate price setting mechanism that is consistent with business model. I believe which is very important, not only for the domestic tax audit, but also the APA negotiation or procedure if the taxpayer may request in the future. So that's so lastly, I recommend since the MoFR 172 is in effect, I recommend the upfront analysis whether the existing treatment or operation for the transfer pricing is really compliant with MoFR 172. So that's all I wanted to comment today.
Okay.
Sorry for the technical issues.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yuri. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a moment to extend our appreciation to our esteemed speakers, Mr. Steve Minyo Kim and Mr. Yuri Song. And then after this, we will have the question and answer session. But before that, I would like to invite everyone to take 5 minutes short break. Please enjoy your break, and then we will return with enthusiasm and curiosity. See you.
Welcome to TaxPrime, a hub of excellence in transfer pricing and international tax services. Here, we merge unparalleled expertise with innovative strategies to navigate the complex world of taxations. Guided by over 60 accomplished advisors, including industry veterans from tax authorities, TaxPrime stands as a leader in transfer pricing and international tax consultancy. We are proud of our exceptional more than 90% success rate in resolving transfer pricing disputes, reflecting our dedication to delivering accurate and effective tax solutions. Recognized by World Tax and the International Tax Review, our expertise is acknowledged and respected globally. TaxPrime effectively integrates ESG principles into a broad spectrum of services, complying with sustainability guidelines and transfer pricing regulations, and provides a complete range of services through our global network, including transfer pricing planning, compliance, and dispute resolution to ensure adherence to regulations and diminish tax disputes, facilitating assured and adept navigations in the ever-changing global tax environment. TaxPrime excels in offering expert support for advanced pricing agreements and mutual agreement procedures, as well as providing specialized assistance in transaction tax and business advisory and BEPS actions plan readiness. We specialize in navigating the complexity of APA strategic planning for transfer pricing compliance and skillfully manage MAP-related tax treaty disputes, focusing on resolutions and implementations to streamline international tax strategies and reduce tax conflicts. TaxPrime is at the forefront of international tax reform, adeptly guiding business through the OECD's BEPS action plans, including the pivotal Global Minimum Tax Pillar 2 implementations. With the launch of our tax transaction and business advisory subdivisions, we are expanding our expertise to include specialized guidance in business restructuring, mergers and acquisition, showcasing our commitment to evolving and enhancing our tax advisory services. Step into the future with TaxPrime, where expert tax strategies meet the dynamic needs of your business. We are more than just advisor, we are your partners in navigating the intricate world of tax and transfer pricing. TaxPrime, synonymous with excellence in tax solutions.
heard very insightful discussion from our esteemed colleague, Mr. Yuri Numata and Mr. Steve Minyo Kim. And then we will move to the question and answer session. We have around 20 minutes to answer some questions. We already gathered some questions from the Google form and also from the Zoom platform Q&A tools. And for you, all the audience, if you have something in mind and you still want to ask, you can use the Q&A feature of the Zoom right now. So I will invite again Steve and Yuri to come to the screen. So I will try to, okay, we already have a lot of questions here. But I will start with, I think this is from Ms. Nani Indah from accounting industry. For both speakers, please advise, I'm sorry, I cannot read it. Please advise us how to have a smooth process and successful APA with regard to Indonesia, South Korea, and Japan. I think both of you are very well versed with this. So this particular audience want to know your tips how to have a successful and smooth APA process, Indonesia, Korea, Indonesia, and Japan. So I will provide time to Steve first to comment.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think based on my prior experiences, I think that we really need to understand different negotiation style between the DGT CAs and Korean NTS CA. I think that this difference is attributable to their, the cultural background. So Korean people, they're not really, vocal. They're not really trying to be more proactive. They're not trying to be like in a CA meeting session, they're trying to be a bit reactive as opposed to the proactive. But whereas from my observation, the DGTs, the officers are very proactive, vocal, and I think that's attributable to the cultural differences. So from my perspective as advisor, I always try to keep NTS officer keep interested in this negotiation and not just knock down and it's just knocked out and we don't want to just get involved in more negotiation with the DGT. That's something we really need to push through the whole process. So that's very important. And also in order to execute that, I think that's just working with the right advisors who knows this difference, who has an experience, who have been there and done that. That's very important. And also another point that I would like to address is the recent changes in Korean AP practice. Because they're in NTS, I think it's not just about the Korean NTS, but also all other CAs. They really care about the peer review by the OECD. So statistically, they put out the statistic every year by in the form of annual report. At least Korean NTS put out the annual report showing all the statistic, and they get the peer review by the OECD as well. So they're really cautious. They're really care about the numbers, how long they took to conclude the one APA, and they take the average, right? All the cases they handle for each and every year. So they try to be abide by those 2-year, 24 months recommendation by the OECD. So in order to deliver that, what NTS tend to do these days is that we have pre-filing meeting and the main filing, and they spent a lot of time in pre-filing so that they could shorten the period during the negotiation stage. So that's something we really need to know before considering the APA. And in order to manage very efficiently the time-wise, you need to consult with the right advisors who knows the practice very well. Yeah.
I see. I see. Very, very, very interesting. So different style of competent authorities and then different methodologies with regard to when they have to spend time with regard to the APA and also consult with the right advisors. Okay. Thank you very much, Steve, for your answers. Now we move to Yuri. So Yuri, how do you answer these questions? How do you think to have a successful and smooth APA between Indonesia and Japan?
All right. Thank you, Bobby. I think one of the important things we have to do is to strategize and know, what we want to achieve throughout the APA upfront. Because again, historically there's been a lot of TNMM type of APAs, but now the business model has been getting more and more complex. Therefore, I kind of understand DGT has been also shifting to focus more on the local entrepreneurship as well as the intangibles. Whereas Japan, I would say most of the Japanese tax officers still think that the business model should be or could be relatively simple in Indonesia. Therefore, if you're going to entering into a bilateral APA program, what we have to do is again, the appropriate representation in both countries. We also have to be careful not to emphasize too much about the local functional profile as well as the entrepreneurship, but also we have to be careful not to have the Japanese tax authority misunderstand that the local entity is very simple. So, I think it's just a correct or appropriate representation and the sufficient communication with tax authorities in both ends. So we have to be transparent and correctly represent what the fact is. So I think that's the key, especially for the Japan and Indonesian APAs, because historically it's there were a lot of TNMM type of APAs. So things are changing. So.
Thank you, Yuri. Very interesting in the shift of TNMM types cases to more complex cases. So what you said is basically coming up front with but correct representation of what actually happened. I think that's a very important point. Thank you, Yuri. So I will move to the next question. I think it's directed to you, Steve. I think the audience from Ibu Rina from IT industry, because you said about secondary adjustment in Korea, because in the regulation of 1722, this only introduced the secondary adjustment but no clarity on the technicality. So I will put context in this, Steve. So in the regulation, it stated that repatriation could cancel the secondary adjustment, but that's it. There is nothing in the regulation with regard to how to transfer the money. Is the money should be actually transferred? How long it should be kept in what account? Something like that. So maybe it's very interesting if you can also shed light on this issue in Korea. How Korea regulate this thing?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. I think I touched upon this issue during my presentation a bit. So we have this the repatriation provisions where it says when the Korean tax authority make an TP assessment on Korean entity, and which has the foreign parent companies, right? Then if the income is upward adjusted as a result of TP adjustment, and because income is upward adjusted, that income, incremental income, has to be repatriated in order to avoid any secondary income disposition. What we call it income disposition. So the capital increase has to be somehow accounted for. So how it is accounted for? It could be paid out as a deemed dividend for the Korean for the foreign parent company and affiliate, the sister brother company, and for the subsidiary, with the transaction with the subsidiary, it is deemed as capital increase. So that's the income disposition according to the Korean TP regulation. And when it comes to the repatriation, the Korean entity should repatriate, get their parent company or get that subsidiary repatriate the adjusted income back to Korea within 90 days from the notice of the NTS. And if it is not repatriated, then it is subject to the secondary adjustment, which ultimately leads to a deemed dividend, or deemed subjecting to a additional withholding tax in South Korea.
I see. And is there any regulation or provision to say that money after being transferred, then it should be capped for how many times, for example, or as long as you transfer it once and then that's it?
Yes, once it is transferred, that's it, and then it has to be when we prove to the NTS that money has been transferred. So please do not make a secondary adjustment. There's a specific government form that we have to fill it out and submit to the NTS. And as an attachment to the government form, we have to attach the bank statement proving that the money is sitting in the bank account. It doesn't really matter whether it is US dollar, Korean dollar. So equivalent to the income adjustment in Korean won, that would suffice.
I see. Great. Very interesting, because it's really not really clear here in Indonesia how the technicality will be played out. But we are waiting more and further information from the government. So I go to the next question. I think it's coming from Aditya Prasetyo from Services Industry. The question is, this is for Yuri-san. This is for you. So in the proceeding of APA and MAP, how important it is the local tax court decision influencing the process? So do you have any experience on this?
Well, oftentimes the Japanese company operating in Indonesia has some court cases with regard to the tax assessment in Indonesia. However, in most cases, Japanese tax authority doesn't care much about what's going on in Indonesia or in court. It's generally treated separately. However, if ever the Japanese tax authority recognize that there's a court decision from maybe the Supreme Court in Indonesia, meaning that there's not going to be any change in Indonesia side anymore, I would say the Japanese tax authority will be taking it seriously and possibly do not accept the MAP filing, or maybe they may stop the negotiation, or they are likely to be reluctant to proceed the negotiation with the Indonesian tax authority.
Oh, that's not a very good news, right? Because I think in the regulation now, Indonesia could continue the discussion even if the tax court decision has been released. But of course the position cannot be changed. So in the perspective of Japan, it will be difficult to provide, for example, corresponding adjustment.
Yeah, if there's a possibility of the corresponding adjustment, maybe the Japanese tax authority still keeps on negotiating. But if they misunderstand that there's no corresponding the possibility for the corresponding adjustment, it's gonna have the negative impact for the Japanese authority.
I see. Okay, that's something that we should know. Okay, thank you, Yuri-san, for your answer. I'll move to the next one. I think it's directed to Steve, but maybe it's also good to have both countries' perspective with regard to this. So this is coming from Mr. Farhan Abdullah from the pharmacy industry. So referring to Minister of Finance Regulation 172, the negotiation of APA could be stopped because of preliminary evidence examination. So I will put context after this, right? And then how your country treat this kind of discontinuation. Do you have any similar treatment in Japan and Korea? So I will put context on this question. So the new regulation has put a new new requirement, the APA submission, and also during the course of negotiation. So if a taxpayer that submits APA and then being brought to an examination that is dedicated for tax crime investigation, so there is nothing that proof that they already doing the crime yet. No, it's not. So it's just preliminary examination, and then the APA, the negotiation of APA could be stopped by the tax authority. And if that happens before the APA could be rejected. So that's the context. So it's like there is a question of presumption of innocence actually here, because the taxpayer is not directly could be said has a mistake because it's just a preliminary examination, but then the APA is stopped. So what do you think about this? And then is there any similar treatment in our country, in South Korea and Japan, to stop directly the APA negotiation due to something? Maybe Steve, you can start.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting topic. I mean, like it's against the doctrine of the innocent until proven guilty, right? So, but anyways, we have nothing like this Indonesian new regulation that is related to the tax crime investigation. So but having said that, we have a couple of trigger point that put the APA process on stop. So it's very general though. First is the time constraint. If you go beyond like 5 years, and an NTS officer ex officio, meaning in their direct authority, official authority, they can put on stop. The second one is very subjective. If NTS officer believe it's difficult to conclude an APA on a certain case, and they agree with the CA of the opposite contracting state to terminate by lower AP discussion, then they could do so. It's very subjective. So I think if you have a good terms with the NTS and try to convince them why this should be, continued as opposed to being put on a stop, then I think this is something you could manage to keep it going, right? Okay. And the last the trigger point is it's very understandable when NTS could retreat the APA map process when taxpayer do not comply with the NTS request to submit information and explanation. So it's a very general, but nothing like a tax crime investigation in Indonesia. Yeah.
Oh, but there is a very subjective criteria also, yeah, which is but as long as it communicated clearly with the right advisors, maybe you can communicate the problem in an effective manner. Thank you. That's very good to note. Okay, Yuri-san, how about in Japan? Can the tax authority just stop the APA proceeding due to this kind of or similar situation, or many other situation?
I think it's kind of similar to the South Korean rule. If the taxpayer fails to submit the requested information, then the tax officer could, reject the APA. And also, there's a time constraint rule as well. There's not a progress on the other side of the ocean for 3 years, then the NTA could cancel the APA. And probably the relevant rule that I'm aware of is that if the tax audit in Japan has already started, then the APA is not going to stop the domestic tax audit process itself. So generally speaking, the domestic tax audit is a priority. However, if the APA is filed prior to the commencement of the tax audit, generally the tax audit is not taking place. It's practically so. And there's no tax crime kind of regulation in, I think, Japanese, under the Japanese regulation.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Very insightful. And I think there are still many questions, but let's just go with one last question. I hope it's okay with you. So it's coming from Miss Indah from commodity industry. The question is, what is the practice in your country if the APA is approved? Does the company still have to provide TP documentation and new comparable every year? So this is technical question, very interesting. So if they already got APA, do they still have to doing the searching of comparables in their TP documentations in Korea and Japan? How about in Korea, Steve?
So we have an annual report compliance regulation, meaning every year we have to the taxpayer is required to submit an annual report proving that they're complying with the terms and conditions agreed upon by the APA. So it's nothing like anywhere near to the full-blown TP documentation, but it could be more succinct and get to the point, kind of like a documentation. So the taxpayer's burden is not as much.
Oh, that's so great. So it's very efficient after the APA agreed, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. How about in Japan, Yuri?
Well, I think it's pretty much the same. If the APA is concluded, all the taxpayer has to do is just to file the annual report by the due date. And if the taxpayer is preparing and submitting the annual report describing, demonstrating that it's compliant with the APA agreed term, then the tax authority is going to deem that the local file requirement is satisfied.
Okay. Wow, that's very good to know. So I will just answer Ms. Indah's question from the Indonesian perspective. So in Indonesia, we already changed, so there is no annual compliance report. We just make still regular transfer pricing documentation, but it is required to provide information with regard to the APA and how the company complies with the APA that is already agreed. So basically that's how Indonesia practice, well, not as convenient as in Japan and Korea, but still it's much better because the tax authority cannot anymore doing any primary adjustment to that transaction. That's very helpful. Okay, Steve and Yuri, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time. It's a very wonderful session. Thank you, and looking forward to work collaboratively with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you.
Okay, that's all from us. Thank you very much to all the audience for participating in this webinar. If you want to ask more questions or have more future custom specific question, please do not hesitate to contact us. See you in the other opportunity. Bye.